As he walked past the supermarket cashier, the millionaire was stunned when he saw her necklace. The same one his daughter was wearing when she disappeared many years ago. Sebastian Carter, a renowned businessman in his town, sat in his luxurious office, surrounded by awards and certificates of achievements that no longer held any value to him. The professional success he had built over the years couldn't fill the void in his heart. The silent pain he had carried for 10 years was a heavy burden, impossible to ignore. Caroline, his only daughter, had mysteriously disappeared at the age of 7, and since then, Sebastian had lived a life that others might envy, but that he himself considered empty and meaningless. Every time Sebastian looked at Caroline's photo on his desk, he felt a sharp pang of pain and guilt. He wondered once again if he could have done something differently on that fateful day. The gold necklace with a butterfly pendant, the last tangible memory of Caroline, was locked away in a safe, far from everyone's eyes, but always present in his memory. The image of his daughter, smiling and wearing the necklace, haunted his dreams and woke him up in the silent nights. On that particular morning, Sebastian felt a strange need to leave the office, to breathe in some fresh air. He decided to go to a luxury supermarket near his office, something he hadn't done in a long time. Perhaps, he thought, seeing ordinary people living their lives might help him feel connected to the world again. As he entered the supermarket, Sebastian found himself immersed in a brightly lit and elegantly decorated environment. The smell of fresh products and the soft music playing in the background created an almost comforting atmosphere. He walked slowly through the aisles, observing the hurried people doing their shopping, when something unusual caught his attention. When he reached the checkout to pay for the items he had picked up without really paying attention, Sebastian saw something that made him stop breathing for a second. Around the neck of the young cashier in front of him, a golden necklace reflected the light from the lamps above. The pendant was a butterfly, identical to the one Caroline had worn the day she disappeared. His heart raced, and he felt as if time had stopped. The sound of the scanner registering the items Sebastian was buying brought him back to the present. He looked at the young woman, trying to stay calm, but his mind was in a frenzy. "Excuse me," he began, trying to sound casual. "That necklace you're wearing, where did you get it?" The young woman, who seemed to be about 17 or 18 years old, smiled shyly, touching the pendant with her fingertips. "It was a gift from my grandmother," she replied, not noticing the intensity of Sebastian's gaze. "She gave it to me when I was little. It's special to me." Sebastian's heart beat even faster. The coincidence was surreal, and he needed to know more. "Your grandmother, does she live nearby?" he asked, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. The young woman looked at him with a hint of curiosity. "Yes, we live together. She's the only family I have." Sebastian nodded, trying to process the information. "I would like to meet your grandmother," he said, almost not realizing the words had left his mouth. "Maybe I could even thank her for raising someone so kind." The young woman smiled, a little surprised by the request, but saw no malice in the proposal. "Sure, I think she'd be happy to meet you. I can give you the address if you'd like." Sebastian took the piece of paper she offered, feeling his hands tremble slightly as he tucked the note into his suit pocket. He left the supermarket in a state of emotional confusion. The necklace, the young woman, the mention of the grandmother. It all felt like a strange dream, something he couldn't ignore. On the way back to the office, Sebastian couldn't stop thinking about the young cashier and the necklace. The idea that he might be getting closer to the truth about Caroline's disappearance began to take hold of his mind. And with it, hope. Something he had long buried. He knew he needed to investigate further, to find out if the young woman really had any connection to his lost daughter. The last decade had been one of silent pain and suffering, but now a new emotion was beginning to emerge in Sebastian. The hope that finally, he might find answers to the mystery that had devastated his life. Sebastian spent the rest of the day immersed in thought, the note with the young cashier's address, Grace, burning in his pocket as a constant reminder of his unexpected discovery. He could hardly focus on work, his mind always returning to the necklace, the image of Caroline, and the possibility it represented. What if Grace really was his daughter? What if somehow Caroline had survived and was living with this adoptive grandmother? These questions wouldn't leave his mind, and as the afternoon wore on, Sebastian realized he wouldn't be able to sleep until he found out more. Determined, he gathered his things and left the office earlier than usual, heading straight to the address Grace had given him. The neighborhood where Grace's grandmother lived was simple, a quiet residential area, very different from the luxurious environment Sebastian was accustomed to. The houses were modest but well kept, and there was a sense of community that he hadn't experienced in years. As he parked in front of the house indicated on the note, Sebastian felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. He stepped out of the car, trying to control the acceleration of his heart. The house was small, with a well-tended garden in the front. Colorful flowers lined the path to the door, giving the place a warm and welcoming feel. Sebastian stood for a moment, trying to imagine what he would say to Grace's grandmother. He knew the situation was delicate and needed to be approached with care. Finally, he gathered his courage and rang the doorbell. A moment later, the door opened, and an elderly woman appeared, her face marked by time, but with eyes that still shone with vitality. She looked him up and down, clearly surprised to have an unexpected visitor. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice gentle but with a note of caution. Sebastian forced a smile, trying to appear less anxious than he felt. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Teresa. I'm Sebastian Carter. I believe your granddaughter Grace mentioned that I might drop by to meet you." Mrs. Teresa narrowed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to recall where she had heard that name. Then, a flash of recognition crossed her face, and she opened a slight smile. "Ah, yes, Grace told me about you. Come in, please." Sebastian entered the house, noting the simplicity and cozy organization of the space. There were old photos on the walls, dark wooden furniture, and a sweet smell coming from the kitchen, as if something was being prepared in the oven. He followed Mrs. Teresa into the living room, where she invited him to sit in an armchair. "Grace told me you were interested in her necklace," Mrs. Teresa began with a smile. "It's a pretty piece, isn't it?" "It's one of the few treasures I've managed to keep over the years." Sebastian nodded, his mind working quickly to find the best way to steer the conversation. "Yes, it really is beautiful. I couldn't help but notice because it's identical to one my daughter used to wear before she disappeared." Mrs. Teresa's expression turned serious immediately. "Oh, I'm so sorry. That must have been horrible for you." "It was," Sebastian said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "The necklace Caroline wore was a family heirloom, something very special to us. So when I saw Grace wearing an identical one, I couldn't help but wonder, how did you get that necklace?" Mrs. Teresa hesitated, her eyes darkening for a moment. She looked down at her hands, now clasped in her lap, before responding. Caroline. She was lost when I found her. She didn't know who she was or where she came from. I wasn't sure if anyone would ever come looking for her, so I decided to raise her as my granddaughter." Sebastian's heart stopped for a moment. The confirmation he had been desperate to hear was right there in front of him. "So, you know that Grace might be my daughter, Caroline?" His voice was barely a whisper. Mrs. Teresa sighed, finally lifting her eyes to meet Sebastian's. "I always knew there was something special about her, but I didn't know who she was. All I knew was that she needed me, and I needed her." Sebastian remained silent, absorbing Mrs. Teresa's words. On one hand, he felt a deep sense of relief at finally finding his daughter, but on the other, he was furious that this woman had kept such an important secret for so long. However, as he looked at the woman before him, he also saw the love and dedication she had for Grace, for Caroline. "Why did you never try to find out more about her past? Why didn't you try to discover who she really was?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Mrs. Teresa looked down, ashamed. "I was afraid that if I looked, someone would take her away from me. I didn't want to lose her, so I turned a blind eye to what might have been the right thing to do. Sebastian felt a mixture of conflicting emotions. He understood Mrs. Teresa's fear, but at the same time, he couldn't fully forgive her for keeping Caroline away from him for so long. "I need time to process this," he said, his voice low. "But I want to get to know Grace. Caroline. I want to know everything that's happened since she disappeared." Mrs. Teresa nodded, noticing the pain in Sebastian's eyes. "I understand, and I promise I'll help in any way I can." Sebastian left the house feeling as though he was living in a dream. He had found his daughter, but the truth came with layers of pain, regret, and the difficult task of reconnecting with her after so many years. As he walked back to his car, a new wave of determination hit him. He would do whatever it took to protect Caroline and rebuild the relationship that had been stolen from them. In the days following Mrs. Teresa's revelation, Sebastian could barely focus on anything else. The idea that his daughter was alive, that she had been so close to him all that time, was overwhelming. He spent sleepless nights thinking about how he should approach Grace, or rather, Caroline. The last thing he wanted was to scare her or pressure her, but he also knew he couldn't continue pretending that nothing had changed. Sebastian knew he needed a careful approach. Grace, or Caroline, had no idea about the past connected to the necklace she wore every day. She had been raised as Mrs. Teresa's granddaughter, with no memories of what happened before she was found. He decided that the best path would be to build a relationship with her, little by little, before revealing the truth. That morning, he resolved to visit Mrs. Teresa again, this time with a clear intention of understanding more about the life Caroline had led over the past 10 years. He wanted to know how she had grown up, what her dreams and fears were. Most importantly, he wanted to know if she was happy. When he arrived at Mrs. Teresa's house, he felt the same nervousness he had felt the first time. The lady greeted him with a warm smile, though there was a shadow of concern in her eyes. "I'm glad you came back, Mr. Carter," she said as she led him to the living room. "I imagine you have a lot of questions." Sebastian sat in the same armchair as before, feeling the weight of what he was about to discuss. "Yes, I do. I want to know more about Grace's life. How she grew up, what her childhood was like." Mrs. Teresa nodded, sitting down across from him. "Grace has always been a sweet child from the first day I found her. She was quiet at first, a bit scared, but she quickly adapted. She never asked many questions about her past, which was a relief for me, I confess. I raised her as best I could, as if she were my own granddaughter." Sebastian listened intently, absorbing every word. "And is she happy?" The old lady smiled sadly. "I believe so. She has friends, works hard, and has always been a very dedicated girl. But sometimes I would see something in her eyes, a kind of emptiness, as if something was missing. I think deep down she knew there was more to her story, even if she didn't know what." Sebastian's heart tightened at hearing this. "And you never considered telling her the truth? Or at least seeking help to find out what happened before you found her?" Mrs. Teresa lowered her gaze, fidgeting with her hands. "I thought about many things over the years, but I was always afraid. Afraid of losing her, afraid she would be taken from me. I know it was selfish, but she was all I had. So I convinced myself that I was doing what was best for her." Sebastian understood Mrs. Teresa's fear, but it didn't lessen the pain he felt for all the lost years. He sighed, trying to stay calm. "I'm not going to take Caroline away from you, Mrs. Teresa. I just want to be a part of her life, the right way and at the right time." The woman lifted her eyes, surprised by Sebastian's promise. You're really not going to try to take her away from me?" "No," Sebastian replied sincerely. "You raised her, you took care of her, and I'm grateful for that. But now it's time for her to know the truth, to have the chance to choose for herself." Mrs. Teresa nodded, visibly emotional. "I appreciate that, Mr. Carter. And I want you to know that I'm willing to help in any way I can, so that she has the life she deserves." Sebastian felt a slight wave of relief. There was much work to be done, but at least now he had Mrs. Teresa's cooperation. He knew he needed to proceed cautiously, giving Caroline the time and space she needed to process everything. As he was getting ready to leave, Mrs. Teresa stopped him for a moment. "Mr. Carter, may I ask you something?" "Of course," Sebastian replied, turning to face her. "Have you thought about how you'll tell her? When you'll reveal that you're her father?" The question was direct, but the concern in Mrs. Teresa's voice was evident. Sebastian was silent for a moment, pondering. "I'm not sure yet," he confessed. "I want to give her a chance to know me first. Maybe when she trusts me enough, I can tell her the truth. But I need to feel that the time is right." Mrs. Teresa nodded, understanding the difficulty of the situation. "Then I think we should prepare for that moment together. She's going to need both of us when the truth comes out." Sebastian smiled slightly. "Yes, she will, and when the time comes, we'll be ready." He left Mrs. Teresa's house with a plan in mind. The connection with Caroline would be built gradually, carefully, to ensure she could accept what was to come. But regardless of how things unfolded, Sebastian was determined not to waste any more time. He had found his daughter, and he would do everything in his power to keep her in his life. From that day on, Sebastian began to carefully plan each step to get closer to Grace, now fully convinced that she was his daughter, Caroline. He knew he couldn't force anything. Everything needed to happen naturally. The truth, he thought, had to come out at the right time, when Grace was prepared to deal with the implications of what it meant. Still, Sebastian couldn't ignore the need for more concrete answers about what had happened to Caroline all those years. Determined to clarify the past, he intensified his collaboration with the private detective he had hired. The detective, an experienced and discreet man named Mark Reynolds, was determined to uncover the truth. Sebastian met with Mark at his office, a discreet location in the city center, where the walls were covered with newspaper clippings and photographs of past cases. As he entered, Sebastian was greeted with a serious nod from Mark, who had already begun gathering more information about Mrs. Teresa and the days leading up to her encounter with Caroline. "I have some updates," Mark began as he offered Sebastian a chair. "Nothing definitive yet, but I'm starting to see a pattern. Mrs. Teresa found Caroline on a deserted road, right? The place where she was found isn't exactly a common spot for abandonment. It seems like a carefully chosen location." Sebastian frowned, trying to understand what that meant. Chosen? By whom? Mark pulled out a map of the area in question, marking the spot where Mrs. Teresa had found Caroline. The place where Caroline was found is relatively close to a route known to be used by certain groups to transport, well, let's say, illegal goods. I'm not suggesting that Caroline was part of that, but the fact that she was abandoned there might indicate that someone was trying to hide something. Maybe a failed kidnapping, an escape. Mark's words made Sebastian's stomach churn. He had never considered the possibility that Caroline might have been a victim of something even darker than a simple kidnapping. "Are you saying she might have been involved in something criminal? That those who kidnapped her were connected to something bigger?" "It's a possibility," Mark admitted. "But what intrigues me is that, after Mrs. Teresa found her, there was no attempt to recover her. It's as if those responsible for the kidnapping decided it was better to leave her there and move on." Sebastian was silent for a moment, processing the information. The idea that Caroline had simply been abandoned as an unwanted burden filled him with anger, but also with a renewed sense of urgency. "What can we do to find out more? How do we proceed from here?" Mark sighed, consulting his notes. "I'll keep investigating this network. Maybe I can find someone who knows more about what happened at that time. I'll also try to track any suspicious activity in the area where Caroline was found. In the meantime, I think you should continue getting closer to Grace. Caroline. If we can find out more about what happened, it might be easier for her to understand when the truth is revealed." Sebastian nodded, knowing Mark was right. He needed to keep building his relationship with Caroline, but now with a deeper understanding of what might be at stake. "Thank you, Mark. I don't know what I would do without your help." "I'm here to help," Mark replied, with a light but determined smile. "We're going to find out what happened, Sebastian. You have my word." In the days that followed, Sebastian continued to visit Mrs. Teresa and Grace, looking for ways to connect with his daughter without revealing his intentions. They began to spend more time together, talking about life, Grace's interests, and her aspirations. Sebastian discovered that she had a curious spirit, a love for books, and a desire to help others, perhaps a reflection of something Caroline had always possessed. Grace seemed increasingly comfortable in Sebastian's presence, although she still didn't know who he really was. There was a natural connection beginning to form, something that gave Sebastian hope that, when the truth came out, Caroline wouldn't reject him. Meanwhile, as Sebastian tried to establish this connection, Mark continued his investigation. He managed to trace some clues indicating that the kidnapping network had abandoned certain activities in the area around the time Caroline disappeared. This raised the suspicion that they might have been pressured or forced to abandon the operation, but the reason was still unclear. One afternoon, while Sebastian was at Mrs. Teresa's house, Grace began to share some of her childhood memories. "I've always wondered what my life would have been like if I had grown up somewhere else," she said, looking out the window with a thoughtful smile. "But deep down, I've always felt that where I am now is where I'm meant to be." Sebastian, feeling a lump form in his throat, responded softly. "Sometimes life takes us to unexpected places, but that doesn't mean those places can't be special. What matters is what we do with the time we have." Grace smiled at him, unaware of the weight of the words that Sebastian carried in his heart. He knew that the time for the truth was approaching, but he needed to be prepared, just as he needed to prepare Caroline for the impact that revelation would have on her life. As Mark's investigation deepened and his connection with Caroline grew stronger, Sebastian felt he was on the verge of uncovering the mysteries that had haunted his life for so long. But he also knew that with the truth came new responsibilities and challenges. The journey was far from over, and the future was still uncertain. Sebastian felt the tension rise as the days passed. The relationship he had been building with Grace was flourishing, but with that came an increasing urgency to reveal the truth. Mark Reynolds' investigation was beginning to uncover parts of the past that Sebastian would rather not confront, but he knew he needed to face the facts to protect his daughter and understand what had really happened. One day, while Sebastian was in his office, Mark called with news he knew would change everything. "Sebastian, I found a crucial connection. Apparently, Caroline's kidnapping wasn't an isolated event. There was a criminal group operating in the area, specializing in kidnapping children from wealthy families for extortion." Sebastian felt his blood run cold as he heard Mark's words. "Are you saying Caroline was kidnapped because of my money? They wanted to blackmail me?" "That's the suspicion," Mark replied. "But something went wrong. It seems the kidnappers were pressured or scared and decided to abandon Caroline in a remote location. The investigation suggests they realized the authorities were closing in and decided to cut their losses, leaving her behind." Sebastian was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. The thought of his daughter being treated like a mere disposable commodity filled him with rage, but also with determination. "That explains why they never tried to contact me for ransom." "Exactly," Mark continued. "They couldn't take the risk. And since then, it seems the group has disbanded, possibly out of fear of being discovered." Sebastian knew that the time to reveal the truth to Caroline was approaching. He could no longer ignore what had been uncovered, and though he knew the revelation would be painful, it was necessary for her to know what had happened. At the end of that week, Sebastian returned to Mrs. Teresa's house with a decision made. He had informed the lady about his visit, letting her know he needed to discuss something important. When he arrived, he was greeted by Mrs. Teresa with a concerned but understanding look. "I know it's time to tell the truth, Mr. Carter," she said softly as they sat down in the living room. "Grace, Caroline has the right to know who she really is." Sebastian nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "Yes, she needs to know. I'm afraid of how she'll react, but we can't delay any longer." Mrs. Teresa looked at him with eyes full of sadness. "She's strong, Sebastian. She may not remember everything, but deep down she's always known there was something more. She'll understand, and we'll be here to support her." Grace arrived shortly after, excited to see Sebastian. She brought with her a book she had recently purchased and wanted to share it with him, unaware of the seriousness of the moment. When she entered the room and saw the expressions on Sebastian's and Mrs. Teresa's faces, her joy turned to concern. "Is everything okay?" she asked, looking from one to the other. Sebastian stood up, feeling his hands tremble slightly. "Grace, there's something I need to tell you. Something very important about your past." Grace's expression shifted to something between curiosity and fear. She put the book aside and sat next to Sebastian, looking him in the eyes. "What is it, Mr. Carter? What's going on?" Sebastian took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Grace, I'm not just a friend of your grandmother's. I'm your father. You're my daughter, Caroline, who disappeared 10 years ago." For a moment, Grace's world seemed to stop. Sebastian's words echoed in her mind as she tried to process what she had just heard. "Father? Caroline?" she repeated, incredulous, as she looked to Mrs. Teresa for confirmation. Mrs. Teresa, with tears in her eyes, simply nodded. "It's true, my dear. I found you when you were just a child, lost and alone. I knew there was something special about you, but I was so afraid of losing you that I never looked for your family. I never told you the truth." Grace felt the ground open up beneath her. Everything she knew, everything she believed about her life, was being turned upside down. "But why? Why didn't you ever tell me anything?" Sebastian took Grace's hands, his voice soft but full of emotion. "I only found out recently when I saw the necklace you wear. It belonged to your mother, and I gave it to you the day you disappeared. When I saw you with it, I knew I had to investigate. I just wanted to protect you, and now I want to give you the chance to know the truth." Tears began to roll down Grace's face as she tried to grasp the magnitude of the revelation. "So I'm Caroline? My whole life has been a lie?" Mrs. Teresa placed a comforting hand on Grace's shoulder. "Your life hasn't been a lie, dear. I love you as if you were my granddaughter, and nothing can change that. But now you have the opportunity to know your real father, to understand your past." Grace looked at Sebastian, seeing the pain and love in his eyes. I don't know what to think. This is so... I can't believe it." Sebastian pulled her into a hug, feeling Grace's fragile body tremble in his arms. "I know it's hard, Caroline. I'm scared too. But I'm here for you. I won't force anything. You can take all the time you need to understand this." Grace clung to Sebastian, feeling the warmth and safety he offered. Despite the confusion in her mind, there was something comforting in his presence. Something that made her feel that, despite everything, she wasn't alone. After the revelation, Grace's life, now officially Caroline, changed drastically. She spent the following days in an emotional whirlwind, trying to process everything she had discovered. With each conversation with Sebastian and Mrs. Teresa, new pieces of the puzzle of her life began to fit together, but this also brought a new layer of vulnerability and fear. She was rediscovering her identity, but at the same time she felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. Sebastian, on the other hand, was determined to protect Caroline at all costs. He knew that the revelation was only the beginning, and that the danger that had surrounded his daughter in the past could easily resurface now that she was close to the truth. His suspicions were confirmed when Mark Reynolds, the private detective, contacted him with new information that brought a sense of urgency to the situation. Mark had managed to track down some of the former members of the criminal network responsible for Caroline's kidnapping. Although many of those involved had either disappeared or changed their identities, there were signs that some of them were still active, and the news that Sebastian had found his daughter was beginning to circulate in the right circles. For those who had tried to keep the kidnapping and its consequences buried in the past, this discovery posed a threat they couldn't ignore. Mark met Sebastian in a discreet cafe away from prying eyes. "Sebastian, we need to talk. The situation is getting dangerous." Sebastian, already on high alert, felt the weight of Mark's words. "What did you find out?" "Some members of the criminal network that kidnapped Caroline are starting to move. There are rumors that they want to silence anyone who might expose what happened. That includes you and Caroline." Sebastian felt a chill down his spine. "So, they know I found her?" "Yes, and it's made them nervous," Mark replied, his expression grave. "They can't risk you exposing what they did. We don't know how far they're willing to go, but we need to be prepared for anything." Sebastian knew this meant Caroline was in danger. The joy of finding her was quickly overshadowed by the fear of what these criminals might do. "What do you suggest we do?" "We need to increase security around you both," Mark said. "I've already arranged surveillance at Mrs. Teresa's house, and I'm monitoring any suspicious activity around. But I think you should consider leaving town for a while until we can neutralize the threat." Sebastian knew this was a drastic measure, but he couldn't risk his daughter's life. "I'll talk to Caroline and Mrs. Teresa. If necessary, we're ready to disappear until this blows over." That night, Sebastian went to Mrs. Teresa's house to discuss the situation with Caroline. She was still processing the revelation of her true identity, but seeing the serious expression on Sebastian's face, she knew something more was going on. "Dad, what's wrong?" Caroline asked, still getting used to calling Sebastian that. "You look worried." Sebastian sat beside her, holding her hands firmly. "Caroline, we need to talk about something important. Mark discovered that the people responsible for your kidnapping are still out there. And now that they know you've been found, they might try something to silence us." Caroline's eyes widened, fear beginning to set in. "Do you think they'll try to hurt me again?" "I'm not going to let that happen," Sebastian said, his voice firm. "But we need to be careful. Mark suggested we leave town for a while until the situation is under control." Mrs. Teresa, who had been sitting quietly until then, intervened. "I think that's the most sensible thing to do, Caroline. You need to protect yourself. We can go somewhere safe where they can't find us." Caroline felt the weight of the situation, anxiety building in her chest. I don't want to run, but I also don't want anything to happen to you because of me." Sebastian hugged her, trying to comfort her. "This isn't running away. It's just a precaution. We'll get through this together, and then we can come back home with our heads held high. The important thing now is to make sure you're safe." After much discussion and consideration, Caroline agreed to the plan. Sebastian and Mrs. Teresa began packing the essentials for a quick departure, while Mark handled the security details. The situation was delicate, and they knew that every move needed to be carefully calculated. The next morning, with the car discreetly loaded, Sebastian, Caroline, and Mrs. Teresa left the city. Their destination was a country house in a remote area, far from known routes and prying eyes. As they drove down the deserted roads, Caroline looked out the window, feeling a mix of fear and hope. She knew this was the best option, but even so, the uncertainty of the future weighed on her shoulders. Sebastian, at the wheel, was equally apprehensive. He knew he had made the right decision, but that didn't lessen the concern he felt for his daughter. They were temporarily out of danger, but what would come next was still a big unknown. As night fell, they finally arrived at the country house, a peaceful refuge surrounded by nature. Caroline looked at the place, trying to find comfort in the idea that they would be safe here, at least for a while. Sebastian, observing the surroundings, knew that the worst might still be ahead. But for now, they were together, and that was what mattered most. They would face this new threat as a family, and there was nothing he wouldn't do to ensure Caroline's safety. The first few days at the country house were peaceful, but also filled with tension. Sebastian, Caroline, and Mrs. Teresa tried to maintain a routine, attempting to make the new situation feel normal, even though they all knew they were in a temporary refuge. Caroline, despite the calm and safe environment, still felt the weight of the recent revelation and the fear of what might happen. Sebastian did his best to stay calm and convey a sense of security to Caroline. During the day, they walked around the property, exploring the trails that surrounded the house, trying to enjoy the nature and the quiet around them. During these walks, Sebastian and Caroline had the opportunity to talk more about the past, about what Caroline could remember, and about the uncertain future that awaited them. "It's strange to think that my whole life was based on something I didn't know," Caroline said as they walked along a trail lined with tall trees. "I grew up with an idea of who I was, and now everything has changed." Sebastian stopped, turning to her with an empathetic expression. "I know it's hard, Caroline, and I know it's a lot to process, but I want you to know that no matter what, I'm here for you. We'll get through this together." Caroline looked at her father, feeling a connection that was beginning to strengthen with each passing day. "I know, and I'm grateful for that. It's just, I'm still trying to figure out who I am now." Sebastian took her hand, a gesture of comfort and support. "You're still the same person, Caroline. What changed is the context, but your essence, who you are inside, that hasn't changed. And together, we'll figure out how to deal with all of this." Caroline nodded, feeling a slight wave of relief as she heard her father's words. It was good to know she wasn't alone on this journey, even though the road ahead was still uncertain. As the days passed, Mark Reynolds kept in constant contact with Sebastian, updating him on the situation in the city. Although there were no signs yet that the kidnappers had discovered their whereabouts, Mark remained on high alert, monitoring any suspicious movement. One night, while they were gathered in the living room with the fire crackling in the fireplace, Sebastian's phone rang. He answered it quickly, knowing it was probably Mark. The conversation was brief, but the tone in Sebastian's voice when he hung up alerted Caroline and Mrs. Teresa that something had changed. "What happened?" Caroline asked, feeling her heart race. Sebastian looked at the two of them, his expression serious. "Mark got more information. It seems the kidnappers are trying to track our movements. They don't know exactly where we are yet, but they're getting closer." Mrs. Teresa clasped her hands in her lap, visibly worried. "Does that mean we have to leave here too?" Sebastian shook his head. "Not yet. Mark suggested we stay here for now, but increase security measures. He's sending more people to watch the property and make sure we're safe." Caroline felt a mix of relief and fear. "But what if they find us?" Sebastian moved closer to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're prepared for that, Caroline. I won't let anything happen to you. We'll handle this, step by step." In the days that followed, the country house transformed into a discreet fortress. Mark's men arrived, spreading out around the property, patrolling the trails, and monitoring any suspicious activity. Sebastian was in constant contact with Mark, ensuring that every detail was covered. Despite the security measures, the tension inside the house was palpable. Caroline tried to focus on activities that kept her busy, but the fear was always there, like a shadow she couldn't shake off. She knew that at any moment, the fragile balance they were living in could break. One morning, while sitting on the porch with Mrs. Teresa, Caroline finally put into words what she had been feeling. "I just want all of this to be over. I wish we could go back to living without fear." Mrs. Teresa, who had been so strong throughout this time, finally let a few tears escape. "I do too, dear. I never wanted your life to be like this. If I could go back in time, I would do everything differently." Caroline hugged Mrs. Teresa, feeling the pain they both shared. "I know, Grandma, but what matters now is that we're together. We'll get through this." As time passed, the presence of the security around the house started to feel like a routine. They were discreet, almost invisible, but always there, offering a sense of protection. Sebastian continued to keep his determination, trying to instill confidence in Caroline and Mrs. Teresa. One night, after Caroline had gone to bed, Sebastian sat next to Mrs. Teresa in the living room. "I'm worried about Caroline," he confessed. "She's staying strong, but I know this is affecting her deeply." Mrs. Teresa nodded. "She's strong, like you. But no one can go through something like this without bearing scars. We need to be ready to help her, no matter what happens." Sebastian sighed, feeling the weight of everything at stake. I just want her to have the chance to live the life she deserves, without fear, without shadows. And she will, Mrs. Teresa said, with a conviction that surprised Sebastian. You're her father, Sebastian, and together we'll make sure nothing takes that away from her. Sebastian nodded, feeling a new wave of determination. They were at a critical moment, but he knew that with the help of Mrs. Teresa and Mark, they could get through this crisis. He would do whatever it took to protect his daughter and ensure that in the end they could start a new life, free from the threats of the past. The nights in the country house grew tenser as the weeks passed. Sebastian and Caroline, along with Mrs. Teresa, tried to maintain a routine, but everyone knew they were living in a bubble about to burst. The sense of security the refuge initially provided was beginning to fade, especially with the constant reports from Mark indicating that the kidnappers were getting closer to finding their whereabouts. One afternoon, while Sebastian was reviewing documents on his laptop, the phone rang. It was Mark, and the urgency in his voice made Sebastian's heart race. Sebastian, we have a problem. I believe they've found out where you are. I'm sending more men to reinforce security, but you need to prepare Caroline and Mrs. Teresa. Things could get ugly. Sebastian stood up quickly, feeling the weight of Mark's words. How much time do we have? Not much, Mark replied. They'll probably try something tonight. I want you all to stay inside the house and follow the security team's instructions. If anything happens, the men I'm sending will get you out of there as quickly as possible. Sebastian hung up the phone with a growing sense of dread. He knew this moment would come, but he hadn't expected it to be so soon. He needed to warn Caroline and Mrs. Teresa and make sure they were ready for anything. He found Caroline on the porch, looking at the horizon with a pensive expression. When she saw him, she immediately knew something was wrong. Dad, what happened? Sebastian approached her, trying to keep his voice calm. Caroline, we need to get ready. Mark thinks they've found us. The security team will strengthen the protection, but we might have to leave quickly. Caroline felt the fear rising within her but tried not to show it. What should we do? I want you and Mrs. Teresa to be ready to leave at any moment, Sebastian said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We're not taking any risks. If anything goes wrong, we'll follow the security team's instructions and get out of here immediately. Mrs. Teresa, who had overheard part of the conversation, walked into the room with a worried expression. Are we going to be okay? Sebastian nodded, trying to convey confidence. Yes, we will. But we need to be prepared. The situation is becoming critical, and we can't afford to make any mistakes. As night approached, the tension inside the house grew. Caroline packed a small bag with essential items, while Mrs. Teresa did the same. Sebastian kept checking Mark's messages, waiting for any updates on the situation outside. Night fell quickly, and with it, the heavy silence that enveloped the house became even more oppressive. The security team was positioned around the property, ready for anything, but it didn't ease the growing fear everyone felt. Around 10 o'clock, when everything seemed too calm, Sebastian received a message from Mark. They're close. Stay ready. Sebastian gathered Caroline and Mrs. Teresa in the living room, where they could stay together if anything happened. He tried to remain calm, but the worry was clear on his face. Stay close to me. If you hear anything, don't panic. We'll get out of here as fast as possible. Time seemed to crawl as they waited. Caroline held Mrs. Teresa's hand, trying not to show the fear she felt. Everything that had happened over the past few days was culminating in this moment, and she knew their lives depended on the decisions made in the coming hours. Suddenly, the sound of quick footsteps outside broke the silence. Sebastian stood up quickly, moving toward the door, but before he could do anything, the door was opened by one of the security guards. Mr. Carter, they're here. We need to leave now. Chaos erupted. The guards rushed Sebastian, Caroline, and Mrs. Teresa out of the house, leading them to a car already prepared for the escape. Caroline felt her heart race as she ran alongside her father, the fear of being caught burning in her chest. As they were about to get into the car, gunshots rang out in the distance. The sound echoed through the cold night air, making Caroline shrink in fear. Sebastian quickly pushed Caroline and Mrs. Teresa into the vehicle before getting in and closing the door behind him. "Go now," Sebastian shouted at the driver. The car sped off while the guards continued to move around, trying to hold off the approaching attackers. Caroline looked back, seeing shadows moving quickly across the ground around the house. The sight was terrifying, but she knew they couldn't stop. They had to escape at all costs. The dark road they followed was unfamiliar, and each turn seemed more dangerous than the last. Sebastian held Caroline's hand, trying to convey some sense of security. "We're getting out of here, Caroline. We're almost there." The gunfire eventually faded into the distance, but the tension in the car was still palpable. No one was certain if they had truly managed to escape or if they were still being pursued. The driver, following Mark's instructions, took them through back roads and less traveled paths, trying to throw off any potential pursuers. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the car stopped at an isolated cabin in the mountains, far from any civilization. The guards confirmed that the area was safe and that they could spend the night there before deciding on the next steps. Caroline, exhausted and still trembling, stepped out of the car and looked around. The place was small but cozy, and more importantly, it felt safe. Sebastian placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to comfort her. "We made it, Caroline. We're safe, at least for now." Mrs. Teresa got out of the car, visibly shaken but relieved that they had managed to escape. "I hope this ends soon," she said, looking up at the starry sky. "I don't know how much more of this we can take." Sebastian knew they were still far from being out of danger, but for now they had bought themselves some time. He looked at Caroline, seeing the exhaustion and fear in her eyes, and promised himself he would do everything in his power to ensure her safety. As the night wore on, they settled into the cabin, trying to get as much rest as possible. The road ahead was still uncertain, but at that moment, all that mattered was that they were together and safe. The next step would come in the morning when they would decide how to finally put an end to the threat that still loomed over them. The night in the cabin was long and tense. Despite their exhaustion, no one was able to sleep deeply. The fear that the kidnappers might find their new refuge kept them on edge. Caroline, Sebastian, and Mrs. Teresa took turns resting, always with one of Mark's guards watching the entrance to the cabin. The next morning, just as the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon, Mark contacted Sebastian. The detective's voice was filled with urgency, but also with a quiet determination. "Sebastian, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is, we've tracked down the leaders of the group that's been after you. The bad news is, they're closer than we thought." Sebastian felt his stomach twist. "What does that mean, Mark?" "It means we're racing against time," Mark replied. "They're desperate, and that makes them more dangerous. But it also means this could be our chance to end this once and for all." Sebastian was silent for a moment, reflecting on Mark's words. He knew that running indefinitely wasn't a solution. They needed to face the situation head-on and eliminate the threat, not just to protect Caroline, but to ensure that this shadow wouldn't hang over them forever. "What do you suggest?" Sebastian asked, his voice steady. "My men and I are ready to intercept them. We'll lure them into an ambush," Mark explained. "But I'll need you and Caroline as bait. I don't like the idea, but it's the only way to make sure they'll show up." Sebastian felt a knot tighten in his throat. The idea of putting Caroline in danger terrified him, but he knew Mark was right. "We'll do it, but I need to make sure Caroline will be safe." "I promise, Sebastian. We'll be ready to protect you. We just need to draw them to the right spot, and then we'll take care of the rest." Sebastian hung up the phone and turned to Caroline, who was watching him with a concerned expression. "What's going on, Dad?" Sebastian took a deep breath, knowing he had to be honest with her. "Mark found the leaders of the group that's been after us. He wants to set up an ambush to end this once and for all, but we'll need to be the bait." Caroline was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. "That's dangerous, isn't it?" "Yes, it is," Sebastian admitted. "But I think it's the only way to get rid of this threat for good." I don't want to put you in danger, Caroline, but we can't keep running. Caroline looked into her father's eyes and saw the determination there. Despite the fear she felt, she knew he was right. I trust you, Dad. If you think it's the right thing to do, then let's do it together. Sebastian felt a wave of pride for his daughter. She was braver than he could have ever imagined. Let's get ready then. This ends today. They spent the next few hours preparing for the confrontation. Mark and his men arrived at the cabin, explaining the plan in detail. They would use a deserted road as the location for the ambush, a spot that would force the kidnappers to expose themselves. Caroline and Sebastian would be in the car, driving down the road as if trying to escape, while Mark and the others would be positioned to intercept any attack. When everything was ready, Caroline and Sebastian got into the car, their hearts heavy and nerves on edge. Mrs. Teresa, who would stay at the cabin under the protection of the security guards, hugged Caroline tightly. Take care, dear, and please come back to me. Caroline held her grandmother's hands, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. I'll be back, Grandma, I promise. Sebastian and Caroline followed the road Mark had indicated, the tension in the air increasing with each mile. The road was winding, surrounded by tall, dense trees that seemed to close in around them. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the sound of the tires on the asphalt. Sebastian kept a firm grip on the steering wheel, his eyes focused on the road ahead, while Caroline tried to control her rapid breathing. She knew that at any moment the kidnappers could appear, and everything would depend on how they and Mark reacted. Suddenly, a car appeared in the rearview mirror, approaching quickly. Sebastian felt his body tense. They're here, he murmured as he sped up the car, following Mark's instructions. The kidnappers' car accelerated behind them, clearly trying to force them to stop. Sebastian kept control, knowing that the ambush point was near. Caroline gripped the seat tightly, fear and adrenaline mixing into a whirlwind inside her. Finally, they reached the ambush point. Suddenly, Mark and his men emerged from the sides of the road, blocking the kidnappers' path. Sebastian slammed on the brakes, shielding Caroline with his arm as the situation erupted into chaos around them. The kidnappers realized the trap, but it was too late. The confrontation was quick and intense, with gunshots echoing down the deserted road. Sebastian grabbed Caroline's hand, keeping her down inside the car as the battle raged outside. Within minutes, the sound of gunfire stopped. Sebastian looked outside, seeing Mark wave at him. It's done, Sebastian. It's over. Relief washed over Sebastian as he got out of the car and helped Caroline do the same. They walked over to where Mark was, seeing the kidnappers subdued and the path finally free of threats. Caroline hugged Sebastian tightly, feeling tears of relief finally streaming down her face. We did it, Dad. It's finally over. Sebastian held his daughter firmly, feeling the weight of the past few days begin to lift. Yes, Caroline, it's over. And now we can start over. Mark approached them, a tired smile on his face. You two were incredible. We'll make sure these guys are never a threat again. Sebastian nodded, knowing that despite everything, they had come out victorious. The final battle had been won, and now they could finally move forward, leaving behind the shadows that had haunted their lives for so long. With the kidnappers finally captured and neutralized, the weight that had hovered over Sebastian and Caroline for so long began to dissipate. The sense of security, which had been a mere illusion in recent days, was finally beginning to solidify. Mark and his men ensured that the perpetrators were handed over to the authorities, and now Sebastian and Caroline could breathe more easily. The next morning, after a night of finally peaceful sleep, Sebastian decided it was time to deal with the last piece of the puzzle, revealing the full truth to Caroline about everything that had happened, without secrets, without half-truths. He knew that to move forward, he needed to be completely honest with her. They were sitting on the cabin's porch, the morning sun illuminating the landscape around them. Mrs. Teresa was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, giving Sebastian and Caroline a moment of privacy. The silence between them was comfortable, but Sebastian knew he had to break it. Caroline, he began, his voice gentle but laden with seriousness. "Now that all this is over, I think it's time you know everything. You deserve to know the whole truth." Caroline turned to him, her gaze a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "What else do I need to know, Dad?" Sebastian took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. "I believe you've already understood much of the situation, but there are still details you need to hear from me. I want you to know why all this happened and how we got here." Caroline nodded, her heart beating a little faster. She knew this was a crucial moment and was ready to hear what Sebastian had to say. "When you disappeared 10 years ago, I was in a very difficult time in my life," Sebastian began, his eyes fixed on hers. "My obsession with work and success had driven me away from you and your mother. And when you were kidnapped, I realized how much I had neglected what really mattered. I should never have let you go to that park alone. I've blamed myself for it every day since." Caroline felt a pang of pain as she listened to her father's words. She had never thought about how her disappearance could have affected Sebastian so deeply. "It wasn't your fault, Dad," she said softly. "You couldn't have known what would happen." Sebastian shook his head, still carrying the weight of guilt. "Maybe not, but even so, I lost 10 years of your life because of it. 10 years where you were alone, not knowing who you really were." "I wasn't alone," Caroline replied firmly. "Mrs. Teresa gave me a life, a family, and now I have you back. That's what matters." Sebastian smiled slightly, grateful for Caroline's understanding. "You're right. And that's why I want you to know everything. During these years, I never stopped looking for you. I hired detectives, followed false leads, and faced a lot of pain and despair. When I finally found you wearing that necklace, it was like time had stopped. I knew at that moment that my daughter was alive." Caroline held the butterfly pendant that still hung around her neck. The piece, which had always been a symbol of affection for her, now held an even deeper meaning. "I always felt that this necklace was special, but I didn't know how much. It was a family heirloom," Sebastian explained. "Something that's been passed down through generations. And when I saw you with it, I knew it couldn't be a coincidence. It was you, Caroline." Caroline smiled, moved. "It's strange to think that something so small could bring us together again." "Small, but powerful," Sebastian said with a smile. "And now, with everything that's happened, I want you to know that I'm here to support you, to rebuild our life together. No matter what the past has taken from us, the future is ours." Caroline looked at her father, feeling a wave of gratitude and love. Despite all the chaos and pain they had faced, they had reached a point where they could begin to heal. "I want that too, Dad. I want to learn more about who I am, who you are, and what the future holds for us." Sebastian held Caroline's hands, his voice steady and filled with hope. "We'll do this together, Caroline. No more secrets, no more fear. All that matters is that we're here, ready to face whatever comes our way." As the sun continued to rise in the sky, casting a warm light over the landscape around them, Caroline felt the weight of the past finally begin to lift. She knew there was still a lot to process, but with Sebastian by her side, she was ready to face any challenge. The truth had been revealed, and now they could finally start living. In that moment, Caroline realized that the butterfly necklace wasn't just a symbol of her connection to the past, but also a reminder that no matter how difficult the journey might be, there would always be hope and love to guide them. The days following the final confrontation brought a sense of peace that Sebastian and Caroline hadn't experienced in a long time. The cabin in the mountains, which once seemed like a temporary refuge surrounded by fear, now began to feel like a home where father and daughter could finally start to rebuild their lives. Sebastian and Caroline spent more time together, enjoying the tranquility of the environment around them. They walked along the forest trails, watched the sunrise, and spent long hours talking about everything they had been through. Caroline started to share memories of her childhood with Mrs. Teresa, how she grew up, the friends she made, and the dreams she had. Slowly, she began reconnecting with the identity of Caroline, without forgetting the important parts of her life as Grace. One day, while they were sitting by the lake near the cabin, Caroline looked at her father with a gentle smile. "I feel like I'm starting to find myself again, Dad. Like the pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together." Sebastian looked at their reflection in the calm water of the lake and smiled. "I'm glad to hear that, Caroline. You know, I always believed that if we got the chance to reunite, we could start over, and I'm seeing that happen right before my eyes." Caroline sighed, feeling the soft breeze brush against her face. "There's still so much to learn, so much to discover about myself, but for the first time, I'm excited about it. I'm ready to face whatever the future holds." Sebastian watched her for a moment, proud of the strength and resilience she was showing. "You have your whole life ahead of you, Caroline, and I'll be here to support you every step of the way." That night, after a quiet dinner, Sebastian gathered with Caroline and Mrs. Teresa in the living room. The fire crackled softly in the fireplace, filling the room with a warm, welcoming glow. They had begun discussing what they would do once they finally left the cabin, now that the danger seemed to have passed. "I was thinking," Sebastian began, looking at the two of them. "Maybe we should consider going back to the city. Not to the same place, but for a fresh start, somewhere we can build new memories." Mrs. Teresa, who had been a constant and strengthening presence throughout the whole process, nodded. "I think that's a good idea. We need to leave the past behind and focus on the future." Caroline smiled, agreeing. "Yes, I think I'm ready for that. Let's find a place we can call home, where we can finally be happy." With the plan for a fresh start in mind, Sebastian began making preparations for the move. He decided to keep his business, but in a way that wouldn't interfere with the life he wanted to build with Caroline. He was determined to find balance, something he had never managed before. A few weeks later, Sebastian found a house in a quiet neighborhood, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, but still close enough for them to enjoy all the necessary amenities. The house was spacious, with a garden that Caroline immediately envisioned turning into a space full of flowers and life. On moving day, as they unpacked boxes and began to organize their new home, Caroline found a photo of Sebastian, her mother, and herself when she was still a child. She held the photo, feeling a mix of sadness and joy. "I miss her," she said, referring to the mother she had lost. Sebastian came over and put an arm around Caroline's shoulders. "I miss her too, but I know she would be proud of you, of how strong you've been." Caroline smiled at her father, feeling the warmth of the connection they had rebuilt. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot to me." In the months that followed, Caroline began exploring new possibilities for her future. She decided to go back to school, this time with the goal of helping people, something that had always been a passion of hers. Sebastian supported her in all her decisions, proud to see his daughter blossoming again. The life they started to build was far from perfect, but it was authentic and full of love. Mrs. Teresa also found her place in this new beginning, becoming an essential figure in Caroline's life, someone she could count on in every moment. One afternoon, while Caroline was in the garden tending to the flowers she had planted, Sebastian watched her from the porch, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew that the past would never be completely forgotten, but now he and Caroline could move forward with the certainty that the love they shared was stronger than any shadow that had followed them. Caroline looked up at her father and smiled, motioning for him to join her. Sebastian walked down the steps and went to her, feeling the grass beneath his feet and the warmth of the sun on his skin. Together, they looked at the garden they were cultivating, a symbol of the new beginning they had created. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" Caroline said, a sparkle in her eyes. Sebastian nodded, feeling the same optimism. "Yes, Caroline, it's just the beginning, and the best is yet to come." With the future shining brightly before them, Sebastian and Caroline knew that no matter what fate had in store, they would be ready to face it together. The past had been hard, but the present and the future were theirs to live fully and without fear.